You want to learn how to use this tool better, I'm going to show you how you can use this to make dramatic improvements to your cast. My name is Captain Chris Myers. I've been a professional fly casting instructor for over 15 years, as well as a full-time fly fishing guide. And this is something I wish I had when I started, because it can help you make dramatic improvements all by yourself. I use it all the time to film my casting clients and show them their mistakes, because a lot of people have never seen themselves cast. I'm going to film with my phone today and then show you things that I look for, so that when you do it yourself, you will be able to analyze your own cast and make some improvements. So the first thing when you're going to use your phone to help you is to make sure it's set up properly and that you can see both your front and back cast. If you can't see what all of your rod and at least some of the loop forming or not forming off the tip of your rod is, it's not really going to help you. So your camera has to be a significant distance away. I would say right now mine is probably 40 feet away at least. And it's much better if you have a tripod or something to sit it on than trying to have someone hold their hand when you watch it. It's, especially in slow-mo, it's kind of tippy and shaky. So use a tripod or set it on something if you can, but if you don't have one, have someone hold it for you. Film early and late in the day, because you need to be able to see your line. And if you're filming in the middle of the day, it's often hard to see the line. Then finally, you have to have a line that you can see against the background. So if you're using a light blue line and you only have a blue sky background, you're not going to be able to see it when you get home to watch it. It's not going to do you any good. Many people ask me what kind of line I use. This is a high-vis Cortland high-vis flip Tropical Plus line. If you're interested, it is very good for being able to see yourself on film and just turn around to see your casts. I'll leave a link to where I get this down below in the description. But you have to be able to see your line. So set up the camera far enough away and be sure you have a background that allows you to see the line. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. So it takes a few quick test runs. Just don't do all your stuff and get home and figure out you couldn't see it. Just do a few strokes, go back, look at it, make sure you can see it. Now let's get into the meat of what you can find when you're using your camera and it's set up properly. What we're going to be looking for is how big is the loop, and what is the tip doing that is causing that shape to occur. And if we do it properly, we bring this up properly, it should go over the tip, and you should be able to see a loop forming. And not only are we looking at the fall strokes, the delivery is just as important. We could have the world's most beautiful fall strokes. If we're ruining everything on the delivery, it doesn't count when you're trying to put it to a specific spot. So not only watch your back and forth, every cast you make, pretend you're casting at a target spot or a fish, and check your delivery as well. So here are some things that I commonly point out to people when I film them and send them the video of it. And if you're interested, I can do this for you, give you a technical overview of your cast on video. You can find more info on my website about how I do that. When you're watching yourself, the very first thing you're going to be watching for is the path of your rod tip. Is it a relatively straight line? So as it goes back and forth, is it straight? Or is your path going in a curve, either a gigantic curve or a not so big curve? What is that tip doing? If the tip is not going in a straight line, that is the very first thing you're going to need to address. And in slow motion especially, you can see what that tip is doing as it goes back and forth. And almost always what is causing it to not go in a straight line is not enough arm, elbow, and upper arm movement, and way too much constant wrist movement. If I hold all this still, move wrist, that's the only thing it can do, is some type of curve, except for very, very short casts. So number one, look and see if your tip is following a straight line. Number two, we want to see if that straight line is level. Is it pointed low in the back, high in the front? Or is it pointed high in the back, low in the front? If we're going for accuracy, it's going to have to be the ladder. It's going to have to go high in the back, higher in the back, lower in the front, so it unrolls down towards my target. Level is great for showing you what loops look like. Going low in the back and high in the front is very, very common, and then people often finish with the tip down, and what was an awesome loop is completely pulled apart into nothing. Are your loops going out towards the target? Are they going all up here in the sky, and then your delivery tries to come down, ruining everything you had? Second most common thing I want you to look for. Third is, are you going down in the back, then instantly resetting your cast forward so that you're not quite hitting the ground or water back there? That's how this develops, I believe. So you go down, up, forward, down, up, forward. So the end of the back cast is here, then the rod immediately resets while the line keeps on traveling, and then we're essentially starting our forward cast from this position, which is barely past half a stroke. So now you've stolen a bunch of stroke length. Now you either have to do it harder, or you're going to have to tack some on down to the bottom. Neither one is going to really help us. So if I steal my stroke and do it harder, I could run into tailing loops. More likely what I see on a consistent basis is a cast that goes up, resets, and then finishes down, driving down into the water, and the leader or the end of the fly line fails to straighten out. The third thing you can be watching for is, are you even stopping at all? Is there any pause in your stroke to allow that line to straighten? And especially for new anglers, most of them don't have a sense of how long this takes, and they never turned around to see what's going on back here. If you don't do that when you're practicing, you're going to get a huge wake-up call when you see what it looks like back there. And if you're not pausing at all, if it's still heading backwards, and not only can you hear a little firecracker sound back there, when you see that on film, especially in slow motion, you're going to realize that you must absolutely pause long enough for that line to straighten out. And every different length of line and different line speed, so you could cast the same piece of lines. I'll keep a static piece here, and I could do it super slow where I have relatively long pause. I could do it fast. I'm still pause, pause, pause. So your pause is not always the same. It's going to vary with the length of line you have and the line speed that you're using, but there has to be a pause to allow that line to straighten out, unless we are making oval cast, Belgian style cast, which is not what we're talking about in this video. We're talking about traditional overhand sidearm 3/4 loops, false casting, unrolling loops back and forth. The next thing you're going to look for is, how are you picking this line up off the water? And if you're not able to do this on water, if you're having to use grass, try to simulate how you would pick this up on grass. It's not as easy as using water, but if you do have the availability to use water, definitely look for this next thing that I see happen quite frequently. And if any of these seem like something you've run across when you've been trying to fix your cast, let us know in the comments below which one of these tips helped you the most, and if you've ever watched yourself on camera and what it was that you found out was the primary thing when you first saw your cast. When I have this on the water, floating fly line I'm talking about now, the same applies to sinking fly lines. If that fly line is not off the surface before we make our stroke going backwards, we are going to be overbending the rod. If I just go from here and rip it up, you're going to see a huge instant bend in that rod, which is going to cause quite an ugly back loop. To get this to work properly, we need to lift up this way. So when I'm practicing in grass, I don't want to just be this cast. You may get away with it a lot more in grass because there's no resistance. On the water, you will not. Lift it up, 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 and then come back, then come over. So you can look for how much is your rod bending immediately when you pick it up. It should bend a little bit and be bent the most in the middle. Which brings me to the next thing you can be watching for. As this goes back and forth, are you seeing your rod progressively bend from 0 to more, and then it stops and unloads, or it straightens out and the tip slightly dips down out of the way when you're making this cast? Or do you see your tip counterflexing way down towards the ground because you are using far too much power on the back cast? So I could make and intend to make a straight line like so. Straight, straight, straight going back. So my straight line going backward was this. Now I'm going to make that same stroke, or I'm going to attempt the same stroke with my hand, but use way more power, and watch what happens to this fly line as I go back, to the tip of the rod as I come back. And you can see the tip is still pointing up here at the end, just like it was in the series before that, but a dramatically different result back there, which you can hear. That's my first indicator, is do I hear all that noise going on as I go backwards? I'm probably overbending the rod. On the video, you can see for sure that your rod is counterflexing down. The rod counterflexes way down, sends the line down, sends a big 90-degree almost bend in your fly line, which you then must pull out as you're coming forward, which wastes stroke. So these are just a handful of the things you can see if you are watching yourself on video. If you haven't ever used your phone to tape yourself and analyze your own cast, you are missing an incredible tool that will make you a better caster. If you want to learn more about casting, maybe the roll cast you saw today, or any of these other ways to improve your cast that I talked about, you can find some of those in my videos right here.